Hello, David McMillan here with the third in the series of lockdown chats with Shaun Attwood, which had to be removed from his YouTube channel and ended up in the dust bowl of my own. In this one, we range from the 1950s to the current times about restrictions, and including Donald Trump's attitude towards how to deal with the pandemic, and even Eisenhower gets a mention. So, let's take a look at the best of lockdown. Yeah, let's stumble into it as usual. Okay, you never know. There might be a gem amongst the dross. Yeah.
There always is. Let me just do one little thing. There we go. Okay. Oh shit.
Yeah. You
Damn it!
Have you got this corner of the room permanently set up? Have you?
I do. Yes.
Okay. Well, that's a good idea. Yeah. There we are.
You still see my face? Yeah. There's the light. Sorry.
No, that's fine. You love the technology, don't you?
We are here. It is week 3 with our regular chat with David McMillan.
Hi there.
And he is out in his finest splendor this evening with his hat and his different earphones. If you're not familiar with David, you are in for an hour of barbed wit in the Australian Queen's English lilt. David was incarcerated on 5 continents, escaped from death row in Thailand for trafficking charges. He was served 2 decades of his life behind bars. It's one of the most brutal places of the world. We've got 20 hours of David on this channel. We have 8 true crime podcasts, some of which are 3 hours long. David also has his own channel, and you can reach out to him and you can subscribe and watch his videos on his own channel. If you go down to the description box below this video, there's a link to his channel and there's a link to all of his other stuff on this channel.
And that's under Show More, Shaun, which most people don't know what the hell a description box is. It doesn't describe me as a broken down old drug smuggler who should learn to shut up, or you who, has to take this YouTube channel of yours to great heights just to, as part of the therapy, isn't it, Shaun?
It is. If you're on your phone, it's a little down arrow. Have you seen?
Right.
You have to click the down arrow to get the description box on your phone. And David is also the author of 2 books.
Yes, a couple of books, Escape and Unforgiving Destiny, which really covers 40 years of pursuit, as I made my life more complicated with the smuggling, and the more complicated it got, the worse it ended up for me. But
and due to his very distinct voice that is known to put many a person at ease, kind of supervillain tactic there, David is being begged by people worldwide to narrate his books in audio content. And do you have an update on that, David?
Well, I've submitted the final revision. They really do like robotic voices on Amazon. That is, we can't put too many great pauses. They don't like what the TV producers used to call dead air. So hopefully this lot will be accepted, and I'll make a video and tell everybody out there, and including the, what is it now, 200 people that I've signed books for, and not just signed, but they've confided in me. I said, just tell me a little bit about yourself, how you'd change the world, what you'd do with superhuman powers, what was the worst and the best moments of your life. Sometimes I get 5 pages, so it's quite an intimate thing, and those people will be getting notified that they can hear. Well, the thing with the book is the tone counts for a lot, doesn't it? You can imagine Shaun walked into the room and put down the bag. Now, if it was just Shaun walked into the room and put down the bag like Amazon like it, you wouldn't really understand that bag was significant. And You have had the odd significant bag in your hand in your time, have you not?
I have had many a bag of contraband, if that's what you are intimating.
Oh,
And
is it? Oh.
also I did try and narrate as well. And it is a skill set that I do not possess, unfortunately. It's a unique skill set. Prison Time, my book was narrated in my voice. Some people who are regulars and are familiar with my voice have enjoyed it, but others have downvoted it. So
Wow.
I'm leaving the narrations to the narrators from now on.
Well, at least it's a job for them in these corona times, in the viral world in which we live, which is the subject of tonight's discourse, everybody. And that is, I've had my reporter's hat on as I've been scouring the waterfront. Very quiet down on the waterfront, I can tell you, Shaun.
No witnesses.
Not anymore, no. A couple of quite good swimmers, though, I did notice. And I've got a little bit of news. I mean, let me ask you, though, Shaun, out of your many interviews this week, have you got a factoid or the most interesting thing that you heard about it this week?
So my interviews this week were with Ryan Dawson, who has been researching the Epstein case for 13 years.
Wow.
This guy had a dangerous level of knowledge, and he was in Japan, ensconced over there, away from the powers that be. So that one just was absolutely mind-blowing. And the other stuff I've done this week, I was interviewed by Sam Tripoli, stand-up comedian, friend of Joe Rogan, got his own podcast called the Tinfoil Hat Podcast or something like that.
Is he aware of the tinfoil hat? Because they supposedly it keeps the evil rays, probably including 3, 4, and 5G telephone masts, from getting through to them.
We're not allowed to mention. We're going to have a euphemism for 5G.
Oh, well, I was making no comment about it other than the tinfoil hatters are all crazy as loons. But I quite like their dedication. You've got a hand. Oh, one of my kind of trolls I quite admire, who sometimes calls me satanic and that sort of thing. But it really, to be a fundamentalist, you've got to put in the hours these days. There's so much competition, don't you think, from nutcases from other areas.
Is this the troll that nicknamed you the Grim Reaper's diary keeper?
No, I've kind of lost track of that one. But I tell you who I've heard from this week. Basil Fawlty, he calls himself. And he said in a comment that this isolation and the whole viral event has kind of given him a rebirth. He imagines this sort of brave new world that he's going to step into, and he's kind of feels enriched by it. Have you found other people with that effect?
I found people that have gone through the shock and are now adapting. That's the case generally. There are some people out there who are using the time to do things that they've always planned to do but never been able to find that time. And there are still other people out there who are going stir crazy. And sadly, domestic abuse is up 100% in some places. And
no, that's true. And even I was in a supermarket today, and Jeanette availed herself of the spray disinfectant on the way out and inadvertently sprayed the security guy there. Now, I don't know. He kind of took it personally. I think he was I'm kind of colorblind to race and tone and everything like that. Years of having to recruit not just couriers, but assess people on their bribeability scale. I had to dismiss superficial things like that. Yeah, sure, we can generalize, but you don't. Put it this way, I like a good prejudice as much as the next man, but they don't actually work very well. You can find some good people, disguised as a type generally known as untrustworthy, and some bad people who look like what's the most trustworthy. I think dentists are regarded at the opposite scale to used car dealers, aren't they? So, but you can have a kind of friendly doctor type who turns out to be an axe murderer. So,
Bill Clinton-esque.
Yeah. Well, he was easy to forgive for some reason, wasn't he? Oh, that was a bit of a week's event. I think the woman who revealed the Monica Lewinsky soiled dress, was it? Stained dress? This was for the young people. They might not recall that Bill Clinton had a, what would you call it, under-desk affair with one of the interns, I think they call them, this young girl. Well, he wasn't actually under the desk, it was just her. But the woman who brought it all out has passed from us. And I tried to find a COVID-19 link to please the fundamentalists out there that this is all the wrath of God. But I failed again to find anything except science behind what's going on. But that's still to come out.
No hashtag Clinton body count on that one then?
No. What do you find when you go to hashtag Clinton body count?
You find everything from the boys on the tracks to Jeffrey Epstein. Vince Foster was a high-profile one. There are dozens of people in the hashtag Clinton body count list.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I suppose, do you find that celebrity status and things that shot people to fame by being notorious for something or other has taken a kind of backseat to not just the victims of the virus, but don't you find that other people are being highlighted? Like, he's a 100-year-old veteran, reached £5 million this week, raising money for, well, I'm not entirely sure, Shaun, whether he actually knew what he was raising the money for, but I think he thought it was something to do with ending prohibition. But nonetheless, his heart was in the right place, and I congratulate him, mostly for being alive. Do you fancy reaching the age of 100?
With my CBD oil, I'm aiming to get there, David.
Well, yeah, you can try anything. Oh, put it this way, if you don't make it, you'll just feel like you did. I don't know, there's not much to look forward to at that age. But with the same kind of link, I'm starting to, when you say people are getting used to it, I think I'll 86 the hat for the moment. It's I'll say the hot tips from the waterfront for later. But people were a little grumpier, and I found Piers Morgan on this morning's ITV interviews, where he was attacking some poor woman from the health service in some way. She was cursed with that thing that people get, people who kind of giggle and laugh when they get nervous.
Like me.
Well, I thought it was just your naturally bubbly personality, Shaun. But,
and that too.
And that too. But, she perhaps should not have been put on as a spokesperson if she had that particular affliction. So Piers dived into her and said, this is no laughing matter. This was the deaths in care homes. I suspect it's pretty much a death-filled place anyway, a care home. Really, an unfortunate number of people, when they put their parents or grandparents into a care home, they they washed their hands completely, and for more than 20 seconds as well.
Imagine every other name in the Grim Reaper's diary book is in a care home.
Yeah, and of course those numbers are going to be high, which brings me, I guess, to something I noticed when Jeanette was telling me of somebody's experience having a friend of a friend. She'd been a nurse, and she wasn't hospitalized, but she said it was incredibly painful. The usual tranche of horror stories connected with it. But here's the thing, Shaun. What are we going to hear? People are not going to pass on the story about Uncle Joe had it. Apparently didn't notice a thing. That won't be remembered. So people out there, if you feel like you're getting terrifying stories about the effects of going through the infection and recovering from it, those are the ones that will be brought to your ears. So that statistically is the most likely outcome. The many people, in fact, the most people who manage to survive it, I mean, look at Uncle Boris. Though I'm sure it's absolutely true. You only have to glance at the look of belief in my face when I say it's absolutely true that he was at death's door. Of course. But let's just say he wasn't. He didn't look so bad, really, after all. But that's not what people will remember about it. Will it? They'll remember I suppose you've been told a few grim stories yourself.
Well, there's a reason that people slow down to observe car crashes.
Yes. On the M25, right?
Especially on the M25.
And it does slow up the observing lane, even though there's nothing blocking it. I noticed that in my day job of putting up CCTV things, even though I shirk my responsibilities as much as possible, there's really no point because people are at home, so why do they want them? And yet more and more people want them. I saw some delivery guy on a motor scooter with a kind of inverted dash cam attached to his head. Now, I'd seen him about before, and this is new. So why did he feel protected by having that? I think it's what somebody remarked about the masks. Even though what President Trump says, the WHO, the World Health Organization, is trashworthy, but they say that the masks aren't particularly effective and give a false sense of immunity. But somebody pointed out to me that people feel like they're doing something, taking some action. So I guess putting a dash cam on his helmet by the guy on the pretty rickety looking scooter, L plates, of course, just have to send off in the post for a license on that one, never get the damn thing.
Thoughts of suicide got me through many a troubled night when I was facing a 200-year maximum sentence, because it gave me an option to do something about it.
That's interesting, yeah. I think it's true that we panic most when there isn't one, that you greet some event. I opened an envelope once. It was from a dead letter drop. And it was covered in white dust. Now, in that second, I put together all the reasons why that might be so, and all the worst ones, that somebody had got a hold of it and gone to the trouble of sealing it up, and why was that to, watch whoever picked it up, and where was I at that moment? Was there anywhere out? And because there was no escape route, no B plan, I kind of froze. But within less than a minute, I'd calmed down and did and this is what I suggest people do when they have a moment of panic. Perhaps, don't look for the source of the white powder in an envelope. That probably not the way to go. But do what I did in the sense that you examine the evidence of the source of the panic, and you probably find it is perhaps not as strong as all that. People are still not really doing that, but this sense of doing something is very strong. I mean, the delivery guy, what's he going to get? It's a very strange gift for his loved ones who can, relive the last moments of his life before the truck hit him or something like that. Yeah, the SD card surviving, presumably. But that's probably the dark way of looking at it, I guess. I don't think I've done anything that would be consciously I have done something and therefore I'm doing something about it, not in relation to this infection. Of course, I'm trying not to pass it on. But people do some odd things anyway. In the supermarket today, a fellow there, he was fully booted and spurred. He had the mask, he had industrial gloves, the kind that you have to put on your hands when you're pushing a body into an acid tank. Well, or perhaps doing the gardening, but one of the two. And he went to scratch an itchy eye. So he looked at this black, thick rubber Dr. No type glove and thought, no, that's not a good idea. So he pressed his thumb into his woolly jumper sleeve, stretched out a section of that wool, I presume, just so the viruses would be fresh, and then rubbed his eye with it. I think that particular mistake came from the idea that you can cough into your sleeve or wipe your nose with your sleeve or something.
So where did his eye gunk end up?
Embedded in the sleeve for the next person, I guess. I mean, what about your local shopkeepers? Are they wearing gloves?
They are wearing gloves. They are keeping the distance. They are supervising the people coming in, the queue, making sure everybody is socially distanced. And
they have one of those perspex screens in front of the counter.
Yeah, they're all bank tellers now, all of the checkout people.
Oh, didn't somebody clean up on that particular one, Shaun? I mean, what is it? A bit of plasticized cardboard and some, very leftover Christmas box perspex.
You're going to add that to your investment list alongside funeral homes and Zoom video conferencing.
Yes. Apparently that's kind of invasive, isn't it? Or something or other. But I think that, this is not new on COVID news, but it's the conspiracy theorists are pretty hot on it. A lot of subscribers to your channel too. There's quite a high percentage of them, oddly enough. I think it's having that old Dave Vicky on there a lot. He's a popular fellow. Well, he's not so popular at the moment. He's been kind of blackballed here and there. But I'm perfectly happy to go along with the idea that there's a conspiracy afoot. But the only one that kind of would make any sense, I guess, is to, and they've missed the boat on this, would be to introduce one of the apps like the Chinese government did. You recall that thing where the smartphones ended up with a QR code that could be scanned by authorities, and it was color coded too. If it was green, your little app glowing green, you could pass without let or hindrance, as our passports say. By the way, Shaun, I always liked that part in the British passport. Her Britannic Majesty commands and requests that all those to whom it may concern let the bearer pass without let or hindrance, or the Navy gunships will blow the damn hell out of your squalid little country. I don't think it actually has that last part on it, but it did used to mean something once upon a time. And we can all, anybody who's vaguely British or even American, I guess, because it's an extension of the British, after all, can kind of glory in the idea that our navies can come in and do something, but really they can't do actually much. They really can't even get back to port half the time now, or they'll get infected too. But
did you ever count the amount of passports you went through during your smuggling days, or is that innumerable?
no, they were enumerated by the forces of darkness, by whom I mean the police, because I made an error, and the source of the passports came from people who had died before the age that they'd have a passport. So I went to the births and deaths office and dug out the certificates. Oh, here's a good one. Died at 5. I mean, I wasn't gleeful that he'd actually died at 5, but but I can't. The only thing that was similar about each passport application was I used the same fake name of solicitors behind them. And then when I was stopped in some country and one was identified as not being me, some little smarty pants in police headquarters said, let's look more closely at the application. Is there anything that, well, it's all fake, they said. Yes, but is it fake in the same way? So they dug out all of the Gray and Gray solicitors, the law firm, that had made applications for copies of birth certificates in the last 2 years. And that gave them 30 names. Because my travel agent, who was in on the operation, he got a call from what they used to call a ticket consolidator. And she told him that a couple of policemen had been in, described them, they left a telephone number. And that there were 30 names on it, and they were all me. Some names were... sometimes you get lucky and it'd be a kind of John Smith type name. And I'd come across some kind of joke names, but I wasn't that careless as to use them. But then I knew I had real problems because they'd identified 30 passports. They could... most countries don't follow passenger movements, but even back in the 80s, Australia did. So they kind of knew how many times I'd been in and out. It made for easy funding for that group of policemen. And the number they left, I'll finish up this little bit, it's all in the book, by saying that I had a kind of cold, chill moment when my telecoms guy traced the number, not to police headquarters, but to a privately rented office in a tall block. I went in there and they had the whole floor. There was about 30 police people working in there. And not too many when I called in my grey dust jacket, fake wig, and moustache. I looked probably like a porn star from the 70s. I overdid it a bit. But my fake jaw dropped when I saw that this was their only job, Shaun, just to chase me around. And my lawyer told me they will justify all that expenditure at some point. And they did. And it was grim. But to just tie, drifting there off into identification, I think we were. But the conspiracy theorists, the only thing that would make any sense, I guess, was if we all ended up with a coronavirus app, not for the good of the country. And it was kind of compulsory. In the sense that things in the West are never compulsory. A bit like eye scanning for passports. Oh no, you can go over to the queue that's, you'll find the end of it somewhere down in the duty-free shops. But yeah, get in that queue. You stand your ground. Yeah, I wouldn't go for all this high-tech eye scanning stuff. Just join them troublemakers and foreign devils in that queue there. And stand up for your rights, you dickhead. So, it would be I think in the Chinese system, yellow meant that you were supposed to be self-isolating, and red, of course, you'd been tested positive. Now, here too, because we're so shy, only the police who'd scan it would know what it was. But, okay, what, I ask, would be the value for a government to get into our smartphones and pretty much get everything? Well, in theory, quite a lot. Ask Facebook, ask Google, they ought to know, they'd do it anyway. They'd know your shopping habits, your movements, of course, your... If they had an algorithm which could pluck it out from all that huge amount of data, they could know your social view, your outlook, perhaps influence elections in some way. But, I mean, there are plenty of people who do that anyway. I think a lot of the conspiracy theories fall down on human fallibility. People bungle almost everything. And even if they had that little open door there, it would kind of go against them in a way, the government, because don't you think if the conspiracy theorists had their way, and yes, it was revealed that everything was known, then the public would sort of say to the government, well, you're either incompetent or stupid, because you would have known from my phone that I was about to have a heart attack and you didn't alert the health authorities, or you would have known that I was about to walk into some fraudsters, because 7 fraudsters were around in that office that I went into thinking it was an investment firm. You know, with total surveillance comes total responsibility. Might have worked for East Germany, but I don't think in jolly old England.
I just got an email from Google. Never had this before, never requested it, out of the blue. And it said, here's a map of everywhere you've been in the last month. And I clicked on things and it showed my exact journey to my London Real interview that I did about 3 weeks ago, and all my little shopping trips. And then I read somewhere else that Google are working with the government now, potentially snitching people out if they are violating the non-necessity self-isolation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And you know, taking little day trips here and there.
So I presume the idea is that Google working, you know, because they get into your phone and whatnot, they knew that you spent only 5 minutes once you were in the shop, and according to your Apple Pay records, only spent I don't know what, £6.50 on 4 pints of beer. They don't quite have the depth for in most cases for the product, just the amount. But I don't think Google's that silly to work hand in glove with their sworn enemy, which is the authorities. I mean, people might think, well, David, your enemy was the authorities. Up to a point. Sure, it was kind of like a game. There were certain rules to it. If I had something personal going on, the people who were following me didn't interfere. If I was doing something good, in the most general sense, like moving the injured away from my car, you know, I don't mean erasing the bruise marks of my number plate, you know, actually helping somebody else who'd been in trouble. They ignored the fact that I wasn't using a phony license and whatnot. So, yes, it was me versus them. But between the big tech, Google, Facebook, and Apple, their view of government and authority is much worse than mine. They just see everything they do as interfering in their business. So much more ruthless. Do you think they'd really be snitches, Google?
Well, I don't think the government even needs that, because I got my first speeding ticket since I've been back in the UK over a decade now. at the Dartford crossing up there on your side of London.
Oh yes, I know that.
And I went to the traffic school, and
That was part of the punishment, was it?
you can either pay the fine or go to the traffic school, and it's not, the points aren't on your license. So I went to the traffic school, and he said now that the cops, if you get in an accident, your phone, the cops just get everything off your phone, how fast you were going.
All right.
And he ran through all this data, which I can't remember on top of my head.
Yeah.
It just absolutely blew my mind that I think it was Julian Assange said, the cops don't need to apply for a warrant to wiretap people anymore. You've got a device that's tracking everywhere you go, that's listening to everything that you say, and you're recording, all these things that you're doing.
Yes, that's true. Our public voice, even in private calls, is just the icing on the cake to them. That is why in the UK it is very rare for a telephone recording that was taken during a case to be actually played in court. They'll say lots of things about the information, but they don't like to. They don't like to bring in the tech witnesses. There's a chain of evidence for something. If somebody found a gun, the laboratory guy comes in, and then the next guy, and the person who put it in a plastic bag. They don't want the chain linking back to how they do their telephone tapping to be out there. When I had a trial in Australia once, and I said to my lawyer, look, when you get any government tech guy, just here's a crib sheet. I want answers to all these questions. The judge kind of woke up to that one, Shaun, saying, what is the significance of knowing what kind of recording machines are in use in Canberra? And but I could see the jury were with me on that one, Shaun. 64 channels it records on something like 1,000 machines going around the clock. And it seems that the price of a bit of data being so small to keep now, they just record everything and then go and look at it when they want. But we can rely, once again, on human bungling to not take advantage of that particular thing. But I too get Google Timeline, and it saves me, I can look back and see where I was working, and so I can be creative with an invoice and whatnot. But it's also a bit creepy, isn't it, when it... I used to get one of the Toby Carveries. This is about 7 years ago. This is one of your favorite spots. Well, I think I've eaten there once or something like that. And what it was, I scratched my head and I thought, there was a local dealer who used to serve up to me. I'd get a bit of weed off him, and I'd have to meet the idiot at Toby Carvery for some reason. I think I still get texts from him, You get those ones saying live, banging, and all of that kind of stuff, 24/7. Yes, you're never lonely as long as... Wasn't there some... I think there's some comedian who did a shtick about how his dealer was his best friend because he was always there for him and all of that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I've kind of accepted it because it's better, don't you think, to be conscious that your every move is known and recorded. So you act accordingly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Don't you think if you, I don't know, we're in a queue or on a train or something, and for some reason, conversation between people behind you, they suddenly cut in and say, well, you come from Shepperton or something like that, don't you? You look like you do. You're always sort of cautious about, what this bit. You don't have to fret, I don't think. And this is true, viewers. Don't worry about whether somebody is a narc or not. Just think of what you're saying, does it actually impart any useful information that could be used against you? And you'll find you'll live quite a happy life. Just substitute somebody else's welfare question for any statement you might make. So instead of saying, yes, I enjoyed the sunshine at Brighton Beach yesterday, and say, you look like you need a holiday. You must be working hard. It's a lot of tosh, but people will remember you fondly, you know. Except for that damn piss, Morgan this morning, really picking on, you know, I mean, why they should send the interviewers to school, because there'll be a lot of government people with, you know, he used to work for the Sun, didn't he? Kind of instead of muckraking now, he's sort of virus raking, but and he had such a feigned and clearly fake concern for these old people, you know, stopping the clock in the care homes. But if she had just spent 5 minutes with us, Shaun, we could have told her, look, think of this guy's past. You've got so much ammunition there. You know, I think he took the stand in court, didn't he, over something or other? The hacking thing came close to him. Well, I'm sure there's something anyway, you know, to fight back on him.
I think when people are on TV for the first time, they behave in unpredictable ways, and the nervous laughter tick was something I had as well. I look back at some early stuff, and it does look inappropriate. Did we, in the last chat, discuss Spanish flu conspiracy theories?
Well, we got to the point where we recalled that it was nothing like Spanish, and in fact it was probably first produced, as it were, as a deadly mutation in US Army training camps in Kansas and in the two waves. But not really the conspiracy. What conspiracy going back to that time, or something?
Yeah, conspiracy theories were flourishing at the time of the Spanish flu. One of the biggest ones was that it was being sent over by the Germans. And also, it was a German plot. The Spanish flu was a German plot. Also, quack cures were flourishing. Turpentine and lard was a leading cure that killed people. Mums, I
thought I was the only one using that.
Mums were sending their kids out with the nostrils packed with salt and little sachets of garlic necklaces. Garlic hung underneath. So it's viruses mutate, but human nature stays the same.
It does. In fact, I have a CCTV client, and she swears by salt and sticking a hairdryer down her throat.
Well, Wildman says chilled cider on his throat got him through it.
I'm sure it worked miracles, and these sort of cures are probably not far away from the Chinese are endorsing traditional medicine, a herbal cure in the last week. I haven't looked up the what's in it. It barely matters. But I don't know whether I think we could rely, couldn't we, on the placebo effect being backed up by what occurs, because out of 100 people, so few are actually, I mean, even if they don't get sick, they say, oh, the herbs did it for me. If they got sick and are almost at death's door, they say, oh, the herbal cure saved me from a certain death.
You've got people in Iran right now drinking bleach and alcohol as a cure, and they're dying.
Bleach and alcohol. You might as well just cut straight to a gun, really. I mean, if you want to kill yourself, there's got to be more pleasant ways than there. Iran's an interesting case. I was just looking at this follows on from this week's bit of science about the disease. As we know, it sort of goes in two waves. You have a kind of normal flu, and then something else kicks in. And believed to be a kind of autoimmune reaction. Now, why is Iran got a disproportionate number of cases? So I looked up the Human Genome Project's breakdown of them. They have a very interesting mix of people, but the mixes they do have between, and it roughly corresponds to the language they speak, whether it's Farsi or Azeri or something like that. But the people in those groups have kind of stayed within that genetic mix for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years. So it does kind of suggest, doesn't it, that when more is known, there will be a genetic susceptibility in certain groups of people, which happens for quite a few diseases, doesn't it? Isn't it, what's that one, a blood disease that people don't have a resistance to who have an African genetic background, mono something or other. I'm sure one of the viewers will say, "Oh, you dipstick! Everybody knows that one." It's, but anyway,
I think the viewers are more interested in whether you actually did any prison time in Iran, or they didn't actually capture you doing your nefarious deeds through there.
I skirted the borders from the Baluchi province there, so my little forays into the place were pretty well guarded. But it is. I knew some kind of grim stories from the spy network, and I really, out of the dungeons in the world, I think an Iranian dungeon would have to be pretty bad. Amongst the top 5, I would think.
What's the grisly story?
Oh, it starts with the fingernails. They come off straight away, it's just. I mean, the detail from this guy was extraordinary. It was copper wire had to be used to hold the fingers down in 2 spots on the finger, or they don't get a good grip with it. And you don't use the parrot nose pliers. You use a special kind that look like giant nail clippers, so they get a good grip. It's toe curling as I think of it. But this is just your kind of introduction to things. But once, unfortunately, like everywhere, once electricity was discovered, who was next in line after the light bulb? It was the torturers. So,
genital electrocution, yeah.
I think amongst the worst places would probably, Russia's not good, but interestingly, the Russians, that when they want to mistreat you, they tend to want to break something. I mean, other countries, like Egypt, for example, they don't like to leave too many marks, but it depends, what level. If you're a drug smuggling scumbag like myself, that's one level, which is pretty bad, but it's nothing like the level of being a political troublemaker.
What method do they employ not to leave any marks?
Usually by paper. A very thick book. Telephone books used to be. The only use for a telephone book in a police station was to put over a prisoner's head before you hit him with a truncheon. Now, you think, well, it wouldn't hurt very much, but it kind of does. The force of it going through even all of that paper, it still rattles. And it's the repetition that works on that one. And you kind of figure you'll get brain damage somewhere, like come out of it like some losing prize fighter after 20 years in the ring or something. Somebody I knew ended up with tinnitus from that. What is it? Tinnitus? I think it's the latter.
Tinnitus.
Tinnitus. Oh, yeah. Well,
I'm just guessing.
Maybe he couldn't say it properly after all that treatment.
Tinnitus.
Yeah, ringing in his ears of some kind. And I didn't really apply that as a standard. I won't do this in a particular country because it's so grim what happens, but more the economics of it. Going back to Iran, I've always had a great wish to do something about the former Shah's jewelleries. The royal jewels of Iran are kept someplace and really not admired. And don't you think, Shaun, jewellery should be admired by all? And it's near on a crime not to let people play with it.
Try telling Queen Elizabeth that.
Oh, yes. Well, there is one thing that at least hers have got, should be left alone because they've all got a story connected with them. This was given by such a person, but the stories are kind of forgotten about the Shah of Iran because that whole dynasty was kind of new, wasn't it? It was only cooked up. I think the British had a hand in this, in the formation of Persia becoming Iran and its royal line. I think it wasn't the flimsiest royal line. I think that honor probably goes to the Jordanians, doesn't it? The Hashemite kingdom of... Oh, no, it's open water. It's got to go to Saudi Arabia, hasn't it? Because picking one tribe and saying you're going to be the noble kingdom, and frankly, if you look at Grandad, he doesn't look much like a king,
Doesn't look like Prince Andrew.
No, I think he peels his... Well, he doesn't peel his grapes with his cutlass, but he peels his sheep with them anyway. But a couple of generations and that nobility is assured. I think... you haven't done anything with Meghan and... what's his name? Harry. Not much to do, is there, really? A bit squeaky clean, a bit kind of white bread and floppy for your channel, I think, aren't they, Shaun? I mean, it'd be nice to know there was some dirt in there, but I just can't think what it might be.
I have, in some of my Epstein Andrew videos, we have talked about Meghan and the other royals getting the media spotlight off Andrew and his nefarious deeds with Epstein.
What is that all they're good for? Just being a bit of a beard for other misdeeds.
Exactly.
Personally, I always thought it was the boss of that family, Meghan, demanding that she wanted her career back. I don't know about that. I think it just really wouldn't work. Even by dropping the title. Well, what could she be? A talk show host? A royal? No. A failed princess?
Well, they're sad right now because they branched out, so they can now go private, and they don't have the stipend from the Queen coming in for the security. But now, because they're locked down, they can't make the money they plan to make. So they're wondering who's going to pay for their security, and Trump said he's not going to pay.
Oh no, he made that very plain. He was given a slap-up dinner when he came as president, and he's very fond of Betty Windsor, I believe, by which I mean our beloved Queen, so he's a social climber after all, is old Donald. It's no daring prediction to say that he will be in his second term. Poor old Joe Biden he looks at... Do you think this is his handling of the outbreak has helped Donald Trump or not?
Trump was counting on record low unemployment and a record high stock market to get re-elected.
Yeah, big economy. Look, I'm a businessman. I got in here, and wow.
And the virus just threw all those calculations straight out of the window.
He can, I suppose, just say it could have been worse, because his appearances are all entirely personal, aren't they? He speaks of himself in. He embarrassed a bunch of doctors by saying to them, these guys are they're surprised at how much I know. But nonetheless, I think people are comfortable with him because you know what you've got. He doesn't have any. Presidents become unpopular if they seem mysterious or better than others. Well, nobody can feel that they've been made inferior by Donald. At least that.
And at times of crisis, there is, when the hive is threatened, the worker bees rally around the queen, don't they, the leader?
Oh, yes,
there's always an element of that. But we're coming up to the hour now, David. We've had all this gallows humour, as usual, which people love and you are renowned for. Perhaps we should finish on a cheerful anecdote to raise the spirits of people worldwide who are locked down right now and are frustrated. Let's give them something to boost their happiness, shall we?
Well, I guess the most positive things that you're really asking me not to crush this at the last moment, but I'll try my very best. The most positive thing, I guess, that I've come out of this, not so much the self-examination goes on, because really that's just playing with yourself, I guess, but the idea of a fresh start. And it's a bit like, when people go through a war, when it's over, they expect something to be a better world. A new Eden somehow will come out of it. Now, will there be? Here's the thing: there can be, but viewers, you have to make the new Athens if you're not particularly religious, or the new Eden if you are. It doesn't happen. In fact, the British had a stab at that by throwing the wartime consigliere, Churchill, out and bringing in some vaguely socialistic, for the time anyway, Labour government. Didn't put up with them for long, but look what we got. National Health Service and quite a few other things, social housing. So, yes, I guess if you want the clean slate, it's not that big a crisis, but nonetheless, let's not lose the opportunity. You have to make it happen. So the time is ebbing away before some killjoy is going to discover a vaccine. And it'll just be another routine jab, another poke by the state, of which we have all had many jabs. So take the moments to decide what you want of this new world and how you're going to do it. Then it can be bright. Or you can just sink back into what you did before. But here it is. It's the opportunity, isn't it, Shaun?
Time is ebbing away for all of us. All we've got is now. So make the most. It's precious. Look at the infinite improbability of your existence. How many sperm were there in your dad's balls, and that one sperm made it to that egg? And if you go back to the sperm in your dad's balls, the grandfather, and the probability of that one sperm meeting that egg, and go back all the way to primordial soup, to the bacteria, and appreciate that you are the infinite improbability of experience, of existence. And then we are all a miracle, basically. You understand? We are all a miracle, and you will make the most of life.
And you're absolutely right, Shaun. And if we had time, we could break it down on the scientific probability, which I won't go near, of even even mitochondria, the little battery that powers us, an invading bacterium that got in there somehow. It took 1 billion years, 2 billion before it happened. But without it, we'd be nothing. Just grubby little, there wouldn't even be viruses. But I think we should appreciate the rarity, and that it may be that we're alone in the universe, but if so, we've got to do something. And I take my hat on to you, Shaun, for that statement, and hope that the bright uplands will face us, even though I won't bet this particular hat that that's going to happen. Well, people, try not to get infected in the next week, and if you do, you've got something to watch on Shaun's channel, because they keep rocking out every couple of hours, I notice. Even if you don't like them, at least you've got the opportunity to say so. Yeah.
If you want more of David, go in the description box, click over to his channel, watch the 20 plus hours of true crime podcasts, 5 continents, stories from 5 continents, the blow-by-blow description of him escaping from the Thai prison. My heart was just going like crazy when I was hearing that story in the studio. Absolutely mind-blowing. Please go over and support David. Subscribe. Let's get his subs up.
Or just go and buy the ebook. You don't have to read it. Just buy the damn thing. I'll get a couple of quid, and you can see more of me, because I won't have to go out putting pervert special cameras into people's houses.
And as usual, I'm doing a free book a week during the lockdown, Monday to Friday. I'll put in the description box which one is free for you guys this week. So
it's a different book every week, is it?
Yeah, I've got 12 now. Oh. And on Kindle, you can make them free for 5 consecutive days. And
they've got a kind of timer on it. It just
yeah.
And page 999 or something.
It resets after so many months. But you can make them free for 5 days. And people don't need a Kindle to read it. They can just download the Kindle app and read it on any device.
So many upsides to being part of a pandemic, isn't there, really? What did we do before? How did we live without it? If we will, huh? Well, I suppose if nothing else, these are kind of little time capsules. Probably, mild late-night entertainment, or something to go to sleep by. Anyway, I'll keep loading them up, and you might even watch a few. Let me see what's next. Tune in soon.